He controlled half of Seoul. His name moved through the underworld the way weather moves. You didn't see it coming until it was already on top of you. His mother's home was one of the most protected addresses in the city. So when the call came at 2 a.m, "Come now, it's bad," he didn't believe it. Not really. Not until he saw the gates. Not until he walked through the broken door. Not until he followed the smell of blood down the corridor and pushed open the door to his mother's sitting room. She was on the floor, and there was a woman crouched over her. A stranger. Black. In a nurse's uniform, working in the ruins of a room his enemies had just destroyed. She didn't look up when he entered. She said, "Don't touch anything. I have a drain-in." And then she told him exactly what to do. If you think you already know where this goes, you don't. Like this video, and consider subscribing to this channel. The rain had been falling for 3 hours. It hit the gravel outside the Kwan family villa sideways, the kind of rain that doesn't care about anything. His car came to a stop before the brakes fully caught. He was already out the door. His shoes sank into the wet gravel. He didn't look down. 3 of his men were on the ground near the gate. He checked for pulses as he passed them. All 3 breathing, unconscious but alive. That told him something. The people who came here tonight hadn't come to kill. They'd come to send a message. He was about to find out what the message was. The villa's main door had been kicked open from the inside. The lights in the entrance hall flickered every few seconds, like something in the wiring had been cut and was trying to reconnect. A painting, one his mother had kept since before he was born, lay face down in a puddle of rainwater on the marble floor. The smell reached him at the end of the corridor. Copper. Warm. Unmistakable. He pushed open the door to his mother's sitting room and stopped. His mother was on the floor beside her favorite armchair. Her white evening dress was soaked dark on the left side. Her chest rose in short, wet pulls of breath. The kind of breathing that sounds wrong the moment you hear it. Like something inside isn't working the way it should. But she wasn't alone. A woman was crouched over her. Black. Tall. Even crouching. She wore a nurse's uniform, pale blue, with dark stains at the cuffs and hem. Her feet were bare. The cardigan she had been wearing when she arrived that evening was in pieces. She had torn it into strips. Those strips were packed into his mother's side, tight and deliberate, holding something in place that couldn't be allowed to move. A piece of thin tubing ran from a small cut in his mother's left chest wall into a sealed plastic bag. The bag from a medical kit that lay open and emptied on the floor beside her. The bag was filling slowly, dark red against the clear plastic. The woman counted under her breath, watched the bag, watched his mother's chest. She didn't look up when Dae-hyun walked in. "Don't touch anything," she said. Calm. Not calm like she wasn't afraid. Calm like she'd already used up her fear and gotten to work. "I have a pleural drain in. Blood in the chest. If she's moved wrong, the drain dislodges." "Who are you?" "Zola Mensah, agency nurse, evening shift." Her hands didn't stop moving. "I was still here when they came through the back entrance. I hid in the bathroom. When they left, I came out and found her." "Why didn't you run?" She looked up at him then. Brown eyes. Steady. Carrying a tiredness that had nothing to do with tonight and everything to do with having made this same choice. To stay, to work, to not look away. Many times before. Because she was still breathing, Zola said. "I'm a nurse." She said it the way someone states a fact. Not a defense, not a declaration. Just the reason, the only reason. Dae-hyun crossed the room, crouched beside his mother, and looked at the makeshift drain. He'd seen a lot of things in his life. He'd never seen anything built from nothing that was keeping someone alive. He took out his phone. He made the call. The private ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. 3 men from a discreet medical service his organization had used for 15 years. Their lead physician, a small, quiet man named Dr. Park, walked in, assessed the situation in 30 seconds, then turned to Zola. Talk me through it. She did. Clean, fast, precise. Intercostal placement, blood loss estimate, oxygen saturation tracked on her phone's stopwatch because she had nothing else. She handed the care over the way a good nurse does. Completely, without hesitation, because the goal isn't credit. The goal is the patient. Dr. Park listened. Then he looked at Dae-hyun. The drain was correct. If she hadn't placed it, he stopped. The rest didn't need to be said. Zola pulled off her examination gloves. Her bare hands underneath were still, not shaking. Dae-hyun watched her. She was already moving, wiping down the medical kit, checking the floor around his mother for anything the team might need, quiet and efficient in the ruins of a room that should have broken her. "I'll take you home," he said. "I don't need—" It wasn't an offer. He said it without heat. But she heard what was underneath it. This wasn't generosity. He didn't know what she was yet, and he wasn't letting her out of his sight until he did. She understood that. She could see it in him the same way she could see a fever behind someone's eyes, even before the thermometer confirmed it. She picked up what was left of her bag and followed him out. Here is something you need to understand about Dae-hyun Kwon. He hadn't reached the position he held by being careless. Every person in his life, every person, had been assessed. Motives mapped. Loyalties tested. Trust was something he extended the way you extend a hand into water you haven't checked the depth of. Carefully, incrementally, ready to pull back. A stranger who appeared at the worst moment of his family's life and had the exact skills to handle it? That wasn't luck. That was a pattern. And in his world, patterns were never accidental. So while part of him recognized what Zola had done in that sitting room, another part of him, the part that had kept him alive for 30 years, filed it under the same category as everything else. Unknown. Possibly dangerous. Watch her. His compound was 40 minutes outside the city. Steel and glass built into a hillside. From the outside, it looked architectural, like something you'd see in a magazine. From the inside, it was what it actually was. A fortress where every corridor had sightlines, and every door had a secondary lock. She was given a room. White walls, clean linens, a window that looked east over the hill. A guard was posted in the hall outside. She stood at the door and looked at the guard. Then she looked at Dae-hyun. "Am I a prisoner?" "You're a guest." "Then the guard is a courtesy." "The world is a dangerous place, Ms. Mensah." She looked at him for a moment. "For some more than others, that depends on whose world you're standing in." He left. She stood in the white room and looked at the window for a long time before she sat down. 3 days passed. Dae-hyun watched her the way he watched everything. From a distance, through the compound's camera feeds, through his men's reports, through his own intelligence network pulling apart every detail of her life. What they found was completely clean. So clean it made him more suspicious, not less. But here was the problem. Every morning she was up before 6. Every morning she walked directly to his mother's medical suite and checked every line, every reading, every piece of equipment with the focused attention of someone who actually cared, whether the numbers were right. She spoke to his mother while she was unconscious, about the weather, about something she was cooking, about a book she was reading. Quiet, low conversation, like she was filling the room with something warm so the woman in the bed would know the world was still there. On the 4th day, he stood in the corridor outside the medical suite. He could hear her reading. Korean. Slow, slightly mispronounced, completely serious. His mother's novel from the nightstand. He stood there for a long time. Then he walked away. He told himself he was assessing her. He told himself the surveillance was necessary. He told himself a lot of things he'd gotten very good at telling himself over the years. But here is what he didn't tell himself. That in 30 years of running an empire built on the loyalty of people who feared him, he had never once seen anyone stay. His mother woke on the 7th day. Her eyes opened at 4:45 in the morning. She looked at the ceiling. She looked at the monitoring equipment. She looked at Zola adjusting the IV line with the unhurried confidence of someone who'd been doing this for hours. "You stayed," Hansu said. Zola looked at her. "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" "Because you were my patient." The older woman studied her. 70 years of a city in those eyes. 70 years of watching men claim things and women hold them together. "My son thinks you're a spy," she said. "I know." "Are you?" "No." Hansu nodded once. Like that confirmed something she'd already decided privately. "He was a gentle boy," she said. "He used to bring home birds with broken wings. Did you know that? He'd carry them in his jacket and keep them in a box in his room until they could fly." She paused. "And then the world got hold of him. The world always gets hold of the gentle ones first." Zola didn't fill the silence. She was good at not filling silences. "When he comes this morning," Hansu said, "I won't speak to him. I'll speak through you. Everything he wants to know, he asks you. Everything I want him to hear. You tell him." Zola looked at her. "He won't like that." "I know." And for the first time, something that was almost a smile crossed Hansu Kwan's face. "That's exactly why." Dae-hyun arrived at 7. Dark suit, black coffee, controlled in the specific way of a man who starts controlling himself before he's fully awake. He said good morning to his mother. His mother looked at Zola. He felt it like a door closing. "Mother." Silence. He looked at Zola. "What does she want?" "She wants you to put the coffee down, take the jacket off, and actually sit, not perch." The muscle in his jaw moved. He set the coffee on the table. He took the jacket off, folded it, precise, and sat in the chair beside the bed like a man lowering himself onto something that might give way. Hansu nodded, satisfied. And that was how it went, for the next 10 days. Everything went through. "Zola." Hansu spoke, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes at full volume, and Zola translated. But more than translated, she interpreted. And sometimes, when the words needed it, she edited. "She said you're a fool," Zola told him on day 3. He looked up slowly. "That's not all she said." "No. Tell me." Zola looked at him steadily. "She said you're as stubborn as your father. But your father had more sense than you. And that your father would be ashamed of how you're treating the woman who kept his wife alive." Silence. "She said all that. In fewer words." He looked at his mother. Hansu was looking at the window, calm as a person who had just said exactly what they meant and felt very good about it. He didn't argue. But the look on his face when he left was the look of a man carrying something he couldn't put down. On the 12th day, they brought in a soldier. Young. 22 years old, Dae-hyun would later tell her. A bullet in his right shoulder. 2. Boots had connected with his ribs from the sound of the cracking. He was conscious and losing too much blood, and the compound's physician was 40 minutes away in the city. His men carried the soldier into the medical wing because it was the medical wing and Zola was there. She took one look at the gurney, at the wound, at the men standing around it, waiting for someone else to do something. "Get me a clean field," she said. No one moved. She looked at Dae-hyun in the doorway. Just looked at him. He said, "You heard her." They moved. She worked for 40 minutes. Removed the bullet. It had stopped short of the subclavian, which was lucky enough to feel like a miracle. Irrigated, packed, sutured, taped the ribs with efficient, practiced speed. She had the young man on oxygen and sedated for pain before most of his colleagues outside the door had stopped pacing. When she washed her hands and turned around, Dae-hyun was still there. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him, for a moment. "How old is he?" 22. She didn't say anything else. She looked back at the young man on the gurney. His face was slack with relief now, the way faces go when the body finally stops bracing. He looked like somebody's little brother. He looked like something that should have been protected. She picked up the waste from the tray. She walked out. She did not look at Dae-hyun as she passed him. If she had, he would have seen what was in her face. Not anger, not judgment, grief. The specific grief of someone who keeps seeing something they can't fix, over and over, and keeps trying anyway. That was the moment Dae-hyun stopped watching her from a distance. He just didn't know it yet. 4 more soldiers came in the next 2 weeks. She treated every one of them. And every night she sat at the small desk in her room and wrote in a leather-bound journal. Small, dark green, brought from her apartment in the one trip she'd been allowed to make. One of his men found the journal. Dae-hyun read the first page, then the second. Then he closed it. He brought it to her room that evening and set it on the desk in front of her. She looked at it, then at him. You read it. Enough. And? It's not intelligence. He met her eyes. It's a woman trying to keep her mind in a situation that would break most people. He paused. My men should not have touched it. I'm sorry. She looked at him for a long time. You're not as monstrous as you work very hard to appear, she said. Something moved behind his eyes. Brief, real. Don't let that get around, he said. And for the first time, the actual first time, she laughed. Short, genuine, a little startled. Like she hadn't expected it from herself any more than from him. He left before either of them could do anything with the moment. 3 weeks in, he appeared at her door at 6 in the evening. There's a gala tonight. The syndicate's quarterly gathering. I need you there. She stared at him. Why? There's someone attending who may have had a hand in what happened to my mother. They'll be looking at me, not at a woman who doesn't belong. He paused. Your presence creates a distraction I can use. He wasn't telling her everything. She could see it the same way she could see when a patient was hiding pain, in what they didn't move, the very careful stillness of someone managing information. But she understood his world well enough now to know this was his version of honest. Fine, she said. I'm choosing what I wear. She walked into the Hotel Shilla ballroom in a gown of deep burgundy and gold, silk panels, African-inspired, structured at the shoulder, falling in layers to the floor. A head wrap twisted and pinned into something architectural, gold earrings, simple drops, old, her grandmother's. The room shifted when she entered. Not loudly, subtly. The way a room shifts when something unexpected walks in, and the air takes a moment to adjust. She didn't perform it. That was the thing. She didn't play to it. She simply moved through the room the way she moved through the medical wing. Purposeful, unhurried, like she had every right to be exactly where she was. Dae-hyun watched her. He watched her speak to the wives of syndicate members in 3 languages. He watched her ask an old clan elder a pointed question about the Yi dynasty that made the man blink and then actually answer her. He watched Executive Han, smooth, corporate, cold, make a remark across the table that was designed to shrink her. She looked at Han directly. I find the most interesting choices are made by people who aren't afraid of being interesting. Then she turned back to the woman beside her without missing a beat. Here is what nobody in that room knew about Dae-hyun Kwon, including himself. He had never once wanted to protect a person because they were strong. He had protected people because they were useful, or because it was required, or because something valuable would be lost if he didn't. Watching Zola handle that room was the first time he understood there was a difference between protecting something fragile and standing beside something that didn't need him. He found that difference considerably more dangerous. They identified the assassin, a caterer with a false lanyard and a ceramic blade, in the 3rd hour. His men handled it in the manner such things were always handled. Quietly, completely, in a way that left no visible disruption to the evening. Zola was guided out before the situation resolved. In the car going home, rain hitting the windows, Soul sliding past in smears of gold and white, he said, You handled yourself well. She looked out the window. I handle myself in most situations. A pause. Then, barely, the corner of his mouth. No, he agreed. It isn't. She turned to look at him. He was already looking back at the road. But she had caught it. The almost smile. The unguarded half-second. She filed it away. The morning after the gala, Seo-jun laid a file on Dae-hyun's desk. Photographs, timestamps, compound camera footage of Zola in the corridors, in the garden, in the medical wing. She keeps records, Seo-jun said. Extensive ones. Every patient, every procedure. The men are uncomfortable. A foreigner in the inner compound, one with that much documentation, is a liability. Dae-hyun looked at the photographs. She saved my mother's life, he said, and she's been compensated. The obligation is settled. The ongoing risk. Leave it. Seo-jun picked up his file. He had been with Dae-hyun long enough to know that tone. He left. That evening, Dae-hyun found Zola in the compound garden. She was sitting on the stone wall at its edge, a mug of tea in both hands, looking at the city below. Seoul in the evening. Thousands of lights beginning at once, like an exhale. The jasmine along the wall smelled sharp in the cold air. He sat beside her. She didn't move away, but she didn't look at him either. My second-in-command wants to remove you, he said. I know. I've known for a week. He thinks you're a risk. He's not wrong. She looked at her tea. I see things. I remember them. I write them down. In your world, that makes me dangerous. She paused. The difference is, I have no interest in destroying anyone. I'm just trying to understand how a man like you sleeps. He was quiet for a moment. You think what I do is monstrous. I think what you do has a cost. And the people paying it aren't always the ones who chose this life. We all make choices. People choose from what's available to them. She looked at the city. I grew up in Accra. The options in my neighborhood weren't great either. I chose nursing. That was my door. She paused. Not everyone finds a door. He said nothing. Below them, the lights of Seoul came on and on and on. Millions of people inside millions of rooms, none of them knowing what was happening on this hillside. I became this to protect something, he said finally. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't an apology. It was just the truth. Handed over carefully, the way you hand something fragile to someone you're not sure you trust yet. And now? She asked. He didn't answer, but she heard it. The silence of a man who doesn't know how to answer that question anymore. The siege came on a Tuesday night. 4 men through the east perimeter. 3 stopped by the outer guard. The 4th made it inside. He found the medical wing. He found the end of the corridor. He found Zola. His weapon was up when Dae-hyun came through the door. And then the man dropped. Not from a gunshot. His body simply folded. His weapon hit the floor. His face went wrong in the way faces go when the heart stops deciding to cooperate. And Zola was already on the floor beside him. Her hands locked. Compressions started. She counted out loud. 1, 2, 3. With the mechanical focus of someone who had made this same decision 100 times before and never once hesitated. She did not look at the weapon on the floor. She did not look at Dae-hyun's men in the doorway with their hands on their guns. She looked at the man's chest and she pushed. Nobody touch him, she said. Give me room. Dae-hyun raised one hand. His men stepped back. He stood in the doorway of that corridor and watched a woman resuscitate the man who had come to kill her. Her arms locked straight, her weight driving into each compression, her face set, not calm, not detached, but fierce, like she was arguing with something. He watched that for 4 minutes. The young man's heart started. She sat back on her heels and breathed. Then she arranged for his transfer, wrote a clinical note for the receiving physician, and walked out into the corridor, where she sat down on the floor with her back against the wall and put her face in her Hands. Dae-hyun sat beside her, on the floor, in his suit, back against the wall, legs stretched out like a man who'd decided the floor was fine. Neither of them spoke for a while. "How do you do that?" he said. His voice had something different in it, something without the careful architecture he normally maintained. "How do you set aside what someone intended and just see what they need?" She lifted her face. Her eyes were dry. She'd gone past crying into the country beyond it, where everything was just very still and very clear. "I don't set it aside," she said. "I carry it. I just carry it after, not during." He looked at her. "During," she said. "There's only the work." He thought about that. He thought about 30 years of decisions made under pressure, and how he'd trained himself to do exactly that. To carry it after, not during. How he'd built an entire identity around that ability, and how it had cost him every single relationship he'd ever had. "I'm in the wrong world for you," he said. "Yes," she said. "You are." They sat on that corridor floor for another 10 minutes. The compound hummed around them. Neither of them moved. His mother asked him to come to her bedside on a Thursday. She was sitting up. She had taken her meals. She had complained about the lighting and requested her reading glasses in the correct case. She was, in all visible ways, herself again. She told him to sit. He sat. She told him to look at her. He did. "The men who came to the villa," she began. "We know who sent them," he said. "We're handling it. You know who carried the order. You don't know who gave it." He went very still. "I gave it," she said. The room's quiet became a different kind of quiet. Zola stood at the monitoring station in the corner. She could have left. She'd been asked to stay. She stayed. Dae-hyun's face didn't change. This was the frightening thing about him. That when something hit hard enough, nothing showed. The pain went somewhere internal and airless where it couldn't reach the surface. Han-soo explained it cleanly. The security team had been instructed to stand down through a back channel she'd maintained since his father's time. The men who came, Councilman Oh's men, arranged in advance, briefed precisely on how far and no further, had been controlled. The entire attack had been a test. She'd needed to know how fast he moved. Whether the years had made him slow, whether he was ready to lead without her. There had been one element she hadn't planned. Zola. The shift was supposed to end at midnight. Zola had stayed late because Han-soo was restless. In all the calculation and staging of the night, one restless patient had changed everything. "You could have died," Dae-hyun said. His voice was flat. "If the timing had been different, if she hadn't been there, I calculated the risk. You cannot calculate everything." "Your father calculated it with me," she said. "When I was young. When I came into this family. He staged a crisis to see if I could hold. I did. He trusted me with everything after." She held his gaze. "I had to know, Dae-hyun. I had to know if you were ready." He stood up. He walked out. No raised voice. No broken door. He simply walked out of the room, through the corridor, down through the villa's lower level, and out into the night air of the courtyard. Cold, damp, smelling of stone and rain. Zola followed at a careful distance, 20 feet behind him, saying nothing. He stood with his hands at his sides and looked at the city below. She waited. This is what she understood about him now. That Dae-hyun Kwon had built his entire world around the idea that he could hold anything, that nothing could reach deep enough to crack the surface. He had built that capacity because he had to, because the world demanded it of him, because the alternative was to be broken open in front of people who would use it against him. And here was the crack. Not enemies, not loss. His mother, the one person he'd been holding the empire together for. After a long time, he made a sound, quiet, compressed. The sound of something too large for the opening it was trying to fit through. Zola walked forward and stood beside him. She didn't touch him. She didn't speak. She stood there in the cold courtyard air and was simply present. Like she had been beside his mother's bed, reading novels she couldn't fully pronounce, filling the room with something warm. Eventually, he said, "She still loves me?" "Yes." "That doesn't make it better." "No, but it makes it true." He turned to look at her, and his eyes, for the first time, were just his eyes. Nothing guarded behind them. No architecture. Just the face of a person who had lost something and was standing in the aftermath of it. He stayed. She stayed. What followed was a month Zola would remember in fragments for the rest of her life. The investigation into the nursing agency confirmed it was a front. 3 shell companies. Money laundering. Owned by Choi Tae-won, Dae-hyun's primary rival, who lunched at clubs where politicians sat and moved money through legitimate vehicles the way other people moved furniture. Nurse Min, the quiet colleague who had once lent Zola an umbrella in the rain, had been paid to alter the IV medications. She had not succeeded because Han-soo had refused to let anyone but Zola handle her medications from the second day of her care. An old woman's suspicion had been the only thing standing between her and the poison. Viper, the mercenary who had organized the compound breach, was found in Incheon. What happened after that was not described to Zola, and she did not ask. Executive Han was neutralized through a different kind of war. Agreements, leverage, the cold calculus of men who speak in corporate language about things that have no corporate language. It cost Dae-hyun compromises he hated making with people he despised. His uncle came to the compound once, said things about bloodlines and foreign influence in the careful formal language of a man who has been rehearsing his disappointment for years. Dae-hyun listened from beginning to end, then asked him to leave, quietly, without a raised voice, without a threat. That was worse than any threat. Councilman Oh called. Repeatedly, used the word managed in reference to Zola on the third call. Whatever Dae-hyun said in response to that word ended the conversation in under 10 seconds, and Oh did not call again. Through all of it, Zola wrote, every night, dark green journal on the small desk, the 22-year-old who healed and started teaching himself English on his phone. Han-soo dictating letters to old friends with the brisk efficiency of a woman who considers near-death experiences no excuse for letting correspondence slide. Dae-hyun on the balcony in the early dark looking at the city, the specific stillness of a man who carries everything and sets down nothing. She was not writing for anyone outside those walls. She was writing to keep herself intact, because the human mind can only hold so much without a place to put it down. The war ended the way all wars between powerful men end, not with victory, but with arrangements, documents, territories redrawn, the Seoul underworld reorganized into an order everyone understood and no one celebrated. Dae-hyun came out of it standing, harder than he had gone in, more feared, more alone. Han-soo came home to the repaired villa on a Saturday morning, walked through the rebuilt gates on her own 2 feet, slowly, with the composure of a woman who has survived exactly what she arranged to survive. She held Zola's hand on the way in. She didn't hold anyone else's. In the garden that afternoon, she said, "You'll stay." Zola looked at the jasmine along the stone wall, the city below, the gates behind her, rebuilt in new, iron, the gravel already raked smooth. "For a little while," she said. Han-soo looked at her. "He'll ask you to stay permanently." "I know." The older woman was quiet for a moment. "And will you?" Zola didn't answer. The jasmine smelled the same as it always had. He found her in the garden that evening. She'd known he would. The city below was going dark at the edges, the last light sitting orange on the rooftops. The stone wall was cold under her hands. The air smelled of jasmine and damp stone and the particular cold of a city night beginning. He stood beside her. They looked at the city together for a long time without speaking. "Don't go," he said. He didn't say anything else first. No lead-up, no careful phrasing, just those 2 words. The most powerful man in the Seoul underworld, reduced to 2 syllables. Dae-hyun. I'll build you a hospital. His voice was quiet, steady. He meant everything he was saying, and she could hear it. Not a donation, a real institution. Your name on it. Your team, your terms, your design. I'll fund whatever you want to build anywhere in the world you want to build it. He paused. I'll step back from anything that offends you. I'll change whatever needs to change. He stopped. Stay. She looked at him. This man who had been built by a violent world into something capable of enormous destruction and, she had learned this the hard way, enormous tenderness. Both things real. Both things him. She thought of the young man with the bullet wound, of the man she had resuscitated who had come to kill her, of every soldier in every corridor, of the ones she never saw, handled in dark places by people who answered to the man standing next to her. She thought of her journal, page after page of a world she could witness and document and survive, but could not cure. She stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It had too much behind it for that. Weeks of proximity, of crisis, of 2 people who had seen each other at their most unguarded. It tasted of salt, of something desperate, of something that had already made its decision before either of them knew it. It tasted like goodbye. She pulled back. She looked at his hands. They were clean. He had showered. He was perfectly composed, his hands still and empty at his sides. But she knew what those hands had directed in the past month. Not done personally. He wasn't that kind of man. But directed, ordered, enabled. The invisible weight of it had no smell and left no mark and was absolutely there. You are the king of this world, Dae-hyun. He started to speak. No. Listen. She kept her voice gentle. This wasn't cruelty. She had no cruelty for this man. You were made for this. I have watched you for 2 months and I see it clearly, the way I see a body's condition clearly. The throne fits you. Not because you love what it costs, but because you're the only one in that room who takes the cost seriously, who counts what it breaks. She held his gaze. But I belong to the other world, the one that counts the cost of yours. Zola. The hospital needs nurses, the people who never find their way to your compound, the ones who end up in the streets with no one to put them back together. They need what I do. She paused. And I can't do it from inside these walls? You know that. And you can't leave them and be who they need you to be. She watched his face. We both know that. He looked at her. The man who never let pain show had stopped trying to hide it. It was just there. Plain, human, real. The face of someone hearing a truth they cannot argue with, and knowing they cannot argue with it, and wishing it were otherwise. You leave in the morning, he said, not a question. Yes? I can't. No. He nodded. One slow movement. He looked at the city, his city, the city that had made him everything he was and taken everything it wanted. He breathed. Will you be safe? He asked. Out there. I'll be fine. She almost smiled. I can make a chest drain from IV tubing. I can handle most things. He looked at her, and he smiled. A real one. Brief, complete, reaching his eyes. The face under the face. The boy who used to carry injured birds in his jacket pockets. Who lived somewhere inside the man the world had made him into. She kept it the way she kept things she needed. Carefully. In a place that would last. Good night, Dae-hyun. Good night, Zola. She was gone by 6 the next morning. A taxi to the gate. The same bag she'd brought to her apartment 6 weeks ago. Her journal. Her nursing kit. The Korean novel Hansu had pressed into her hands the night before. She did not look back when the car pulled away. Not because there was nothing worth looking at. Because she knew herself well enough to know that if she looked back, she would not keep going forward. and forward was the only direction that made sense for the life she was returning to. In Seoul, on a balcony above a city that had given him everything and taken everything it wanted in return, a man stood in the first light of morning. He looked south, past the Han River, past the highways, past the edges of the world he ruled. He held a Korean novel in one hand, the novel his mother had told him Zola had kept. He hadn't known until last night. His mother had said it quietly, without ceremony. She asked to keep it. I said yes. He opened the front cover. His mother's handwriting on the title page. Firm. Slanted left. For the girl who stayed when she didn't have to. He stood there for a long time, the city spread out below him, waking up. The first taxis, the first lights in the office towers, the first sounds of a day beginning in a world that had no idea what had happened on this balcony, in this corridor, in the ruins of a sitting room in the rain. He closed the book. He remained the boss. He remained the king. And in the cold, honest quiet of a throne that fit him perfectly and gave him nothing he actually needed, he understood what she had been trying to tell him in the garden. The throne is yours, Dae-hyun, but you were born to be more than a throne. He had simply been born too late to choose differently. The city woke up below him. He did not move. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to this channel for more stories like this.